Welcome to Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Andi Arndt.
Yes, we do. And I was so excited about this because I am a total Andi Arndt fangirl. So it was it was a great episode.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Andi, she narrates audiobooks. And we talked about just audiobook narration, like how she does it, how to find a narrator, tips for writing, like writing your books with narration in mind. And it was really good. And we talked about trends and AI and things like that too.
Yeah. It was really good. And I think you guys are going to really like it. So what's been going on with you, Sarah?
Well, I went out of town, went to visit my parents for Mother's Day. And so this whole week I got back on Monday and it's like, I don't know what day it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on? I did get my proof copy of my new book.
Oh my gosh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, it's got color and stuff in it. But of course, I'm really glad I did a proof copy because like it's got color, chapter title, things. But I'm so glad I did a proof because I had to go in and redo the images because I like the map, and I've got a little card that's like the passenger list, and you just couldn't read it. It was just not. There wasn't enough contrast, and it wasn't big enough. So of course that means you have to redo all the page count and everything.
Yeah.
So did all that, and I'm working on getting the all the covers. I now need this. This blows my mind because I'm doing a special edition ebook or a hardcover and paperback, and then I have all my regular stuff. I need 6 ISBNs because I do an ISBN for the audiobook as well, and then I do the large print and then the regular. So I was like, wow, this is a lot. But I mean, I'm doing like a big, launch on my store for this, and then the special editions, they won't be available anywhere except my store. But yeah, I was like, wow, things have changed from when we used to just put out the ebook and we were like, yeah, we'll do a paperback when we have time.
Yeah, get to it. Yeah. Well, I mean, cautionary tale because I probably would not have gotten a proof copy. So, be like Sarah.
Well, I've learned the hard way too. Yeah. So that's about all I've got going on because the rest of the week is just catching up with email and stuff like that. So what about you?
Oh, I'm having an existential crisis. I've been having one, I think, for 2.5 years, but yeah, I haven't done much except wring my hands and what my place is in this world and this business, and if I should be doing this or not doing this, and I mean, as far as writing, and yeah, to be totally honest, that's what I've done this week.
I think with the way the business is, if somebody hasn't done that a little bit, because everything's changed so much.
Yeah.
I think we've all done that, right?
Yeah.
I've thought about, there's like for a while there, it was urgent to write books and release them. I felt like there was this urgency because there was opportunity, and that's kind of tapered off. And so now I'm like, okay, what am I doing now? What is my strategy and goal? And I've been doing it for a while. We've both been doing it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked to Claire Taylor, because I'm an Enneagram 7, which means basically I avoid pain at all costs. And, this is all painful. I mean, I told my daughter, I said, writing is painful, not writing is painful, not knowing what I want is painful. It's all painful. And she said, well, I guess you get to choose your pain. And that's a really good thing to think about. I get to choose, but I don't know what I want. And so helping me like just
work through that.
Yeah, just see some things. And, I get really judgmental about myself, like really, really judgmental. And that's part of what I do, as a seven. I will go to my one, they don't call them basements like Becca does, but like
that's what it is basically, right?
Yeah. And so anyway, that helped. And I do want to write, but you're right. Like things have changed so much that it's like, what is your motivation to write now? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it really does just need to be to tell a story or a story you love, because the chance of us making a living doing this like we did before is lower. It's lower. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that it can't happen. It's just
Mm-hmm.
lower. And so because of the way the business has changed and the
Mm-hmm.
market is flooded and everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've had to really think about it, and I'm not sure I'm through it, but you know, the only way through it's through it. So yeah.
Yeah. And basically, the choose your pain is like there's not going to be a choice that's going to be easy and fun. It's
Yeah.
going to be like, oh, this is all joy all the time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of us are at that point. And I've
I know they
certainly
are. Yeah, I know they
reassessed.
And because I've talked to, I mean, since I made a post about it, and then
Mm-hmm.
talked about it on Clubhouse, and
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I'm not the only one for sure
Yeah,
in this
that's true.
story. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, that's me. So
Yeah.
Debbie Downer over here, but
Well, as we talk about what's really going on. So,
we're real
yeah.
people with
Yeah.
real stuff.
Very on
Yeah,
brand for us.
exactly, exactly.
Um, oh, I should mention before we go, the Spark Story Summit is
Mm-hmm.
coming up. That's from
Yep.
May 19th to May 26th. And I have a session in that where I talk about mysteries, writing mysteries,
Mm-hmm.
and there's all kinds of information in it. It's not just about mysteries, it's about writing. It's like about taking an idea, getting it down on paper,
Yeah.
and it's going to be excellent. I think it's registration is free. You can sign up with an email, and you can watch the live sessions. And each session remains live for 24 hours after it airs, and then after that, the sessions will lock, and you can pay for a pass to view everything. And so it's
Oh,
$67 during the pre-registration up until May 26th. So
oh,
I'll put a link for that in the show notes. And my session, I think, is on May 28th.
okay.
So if you want to watch it live, I'll talk about it again
Mm-hmm.
next podcast.
Okay.
But that's just a quick reminder about that. And I guess we should get on to Andi.
Yeah, we should for
Uh,
sure.
all right, here we go. Today we are really excited to talk to Andi Arndt. Hi, Andi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
We are great. And I have to say, I'm fangirling a little bit. You were one of the first narrators I listened to when I was listening to romance, and I'm a huge fan. So very
Thank
excited.
you.
Yeah.
Let me read your bio and we'll get right into the questions. Andi has narrated hundreds of audiobooks and co authored one with author Tara Civic, Heidi's Guide to Four-Letter Words, which made Audible's list of 100 best romance audiobooks of all time. So,
That's
welcome.
amazing. Yes. Tell us how you got started working with writers.
The very first audiobook I ever did, I approached an author who taught at the local university. Her name is Lucy Corin. And my book club had read her book as one of our books, and then she came to our book club meeting. So I had met her one time, and I could not get her book out of my head. So when I had studied audiobook technique and the business a little bit, and it was time to put my first book out there, I contacted her and said, I noticed that your book doesn't have an audiobook. Could I do it? And she said, I don't see why not. And she put me in touch with University of Alabama Press, which was her press. And we agreed on a price for me to buy her rights, and I self-produced that book, and it was my first audiobook. So
That's
that was how I
amazing.
got started.
Now, do you have a background in acting, or did you just wake
Or
up one day and
narration.
go, I think I'll investigate this audiobook thing and then do it?
Yeah, I'd always been a theater kid and a music kid. I'd always been on the art side of things, even from like the junior high school play. Then after college and grad school, I worked at a public radio station for a while. So that was the microphone side of things.
Yes.
And then I taught acting and voice at James Madison University for 12 years.
Wow.
And then I started doing voiceover. But every time I would go do, commercial auditions or kind of e-learning or whatever, I'd just be like, man, audiobooks would be the pure storytelling. Like, you're not trying to get somebody to buy something because they already bought it. They want you to tell them this story and you get to just be an actor. So, yeah.
That is wonderful.
That's fascinating. I love that.
How did your co-authored book come about? Because sometimes we ask people who are not on the writing side if they have any aspirations to write, but you've already written.
It was a setup by Audible Originals because I was at a Polycon on a panel of narrators, and someone asked me about accents that I did and how I felt about accent work. And it's a long story about how this inside joke came about with some girlfriends of mine who are also narrators. But I made a joke about how nobody ever asked for my Minnesota accent for romance. And,
Imagine.
And why not? Because there keep being more Minnesotans. So somebody thinks that it sounds hot.
It's really sexy.
Like, we discovered the word thigh is really funny in that accent. So it got all these laughs, and Rose from Audible Originals happened to be in the audience, and she was like, "Oh, that was so funny when you said that." And I said, "Yeah, when this character bubbled up when I was hanging out with some girlfriends, we named her, and so she's like our inside joke character, and it'd be funny to write her story someday." And Rose said, "Oh, I could hook you up with somebody." And it just so happened that Tara Civic is from Ohio, so she's got that same Midwestern sensibility. So they put us together. She loved the idea. I loved the idea of working with her. And so we worked on Heidi's Guide to Four-Letter Words, and it came out, like 2018, I want to say.
Yeah. That's just such a great story. I love that. And I love the accent. It just kills me. And you narrated that book, I'm assuming?
I did. And Tara and I had like a party in Minneapolis. Like, we recorded it at a studio in Minneapolis called Audio Ruckus, which is the best name. And she was there for the first day of recording. So that was really special. And I need to give a shout out. She is right now dealing with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And there is a GoFundMe for Tara. I hope it's okay to say that, because she needs all the help she can get. And I know, Jamie, you have thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That is just such a fantastic story. What do you wish authors knew about audiobook narration? Is the list long, or is it just
it depends on the person, and I think authors know more now than used to be the case when I was first. I've been doing this for 15 years now, so I've seen it come a long way.
Yeah.
I think one of the myths that still persists in some areas is that authors can't directly get in touch with a narrator that they're interested in working with. We're not in some studio system where they have to get in touch with. Most of us don't even have agents. You can literally just go look up a narrator's website, and if they're smart, they have a contact form, and you can just drop them a line or hit them up on. I've been approached on Instagram private message, and just say, "I love your voice," or "I think your voice is a good fit for the main character of my book. How do you work?" Or, "Are you interested and available to work with me on my book?"
And then, do you usually give your rates up front, or do you kind of feel it
What's
out
the
and
process
see if
like?
it's somebody you want to work with?
Yeah. So I have a range of rates that I feel comfortable with.
Uh-huh.
More people are coming to me for romance, and so those rates are a bit higher because if I let it, romance would completely take over all of my calendar, and I really like a variety. I got to do some horror last year that ended up making Audible's like top horror listens of last year, and that was really fun.
Wow.
I like memoirs, I like literary fiction, I like thrillers. So sometimes my rates are like in the lower end of my range
For
for
the
that
project you're interested in.
Yeah. I think for most of us, there is that wow, I really connect with this book. I'll do everything I can to make it possible as long as it makes sense financially.
I think this might be a good point to talk about the process a little bit. I have an audio narrator that I send her the books and I send her, here's some thoughts on the characters. Sometimes if I feel like she needs it, but she's done several for me. So it's like she knows. And then she goes off and does her thing. But talk to us about the process of getting a novel and how you turn it into an audiobook, because I have a feeling there's a whole lot of behind the scenes work that goes on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I get the book and I really love, hot tip, I love to get the cover art if it's available.
Okay.
I love to see how the book is being communicated to its audience. You know, is this a cute cartoon cover or is this like an ominous, realistic, or even paranormal looking cover? So all the information I can get, I will go look up if it's a new to me author, I'll go learn something about the author, maybe look up interviews with the author, learn what I can about their audience and what their audience likes about their books, because I'm there to deliver what the audience likes about that author's work. And then when it comes to the actual text itself, after I've read the blurb and all those things, I will close read the first 3 chapters and the last 3 chapters before I do anything else, because I want to know, where do we start? Where are we going to end up? Then I can usually tell what is the main conflict. So if it's a romance, what's in their way? What keeps them from being together? And I go back to that crisis climax area and I see where they have the big pour their heart out. I always felt this way, or I always wanted this, or the big misunderstanding, or the reveal of who done it if it's a mystery. I go right to that scene. And from there, I pretty much know supporting characters who played a major role. What is it that people need to understand about them? And I also know the high emotional volume scene, because you can't just shout your way through the book. You have to pace yourself so that you know where the big excitement is. So yeah, I prepare by it's almost like making a map of a journey, but I don't take the journey until I'm reading the book.
Did the first book you narrated, did it have sex scenes on the page?
No. The first book I narrated was called Everyday Psycho Killers, A History for Girls. And the thing that really struck me about it was a pastiche. It was not exactly a short story collection because there were echoes of things that were interconnected. But it was like how weird Florida can be and how cruel middle schoolers can be. And it had these haunting scenes that had to do with racism in the South and Seminoles in their community in Florida.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. No, it didn't have any sex on the page. No.
So the first one you did, was that, did you have to talk yourself into doing it, or were you like, oh no, I can do this?
I was offered Lick by Kylie Scott, by a producer that I have been doing like cozy mysteries and backlist science fiction and stuff for. And one day, Bill, who's passed away now, may he rest in peace, he was an amazing person, Bill DeFries. He sent me a book and he was really like type A, dealing out the books to all the narrators, busy guy, right? It's like, hey, I got a book for you, let me know, blah, blah, blah. And I was just starting to page through it, and I get another email from him saying, whoa, I thought that was YA, but it's definitely not. So look through and make sure you're okay with some of that content.
Yeah.
And so I looked through, and it was definitely right there.
Yeah.
And I did have to, part of you thinks about, is my mom going to hear that?
Yeah.
But it was a fateful day because I just thought, no, I like the writing and let's do it.
Yeah, I listened to that audio Lick. I listened to Lick, and that was one of my first audiobooks. Yeah, I loved your narration of that. And when you said, is my mom gonna, we as writers, romance writers, we have to think, some people get hung up on that. I never did. I don't know, probably because I was older when I started writing, but we're creating that on the page. So it's a lot. But in a lot of ways, you're creating it auditorially because it's different when you listen to it than when you read it. So I can see how you would have to go, is this something I really want to do? So I love that. I appreciate that answer.
Is there anything that you wish you'd known about publishing or working with authors?
I think the first time I went to an author reader event was an Apolycon, I think in 2015, so 10 years ago now. I learned so much about the business side of what you do, the visual presentation of your brand, the way that you relate with your audience, and again, what they love about you and reflect back to you, and how excited readers are to meet you and tell you how your books affect them and everything. I just enjoyed watching that whole interaction, and I thought, oh, this is like a whole other level of understanding which authors go out for drinks together after the thing's over, and they are each other's deep friends. They beta read for each other, or even before that, reading drafts for each other. You guys co-promote in your newsletters and on your social media. It was like a whole thing. So it's not that I wish I'd known that, but I'm glad I learned it early on.
I love that. What do you see authors doing that they do because they think they have to, but they're not producing results? And just specifically in general or specifically to audiobooks, either way.
I'm going to say going for big narrator names with blinders on. I think sometimes once a narrator has popped and they've got social media momentum and stuff, that's great and everything. But I think sometimes, especially a newer author, misses an opportunity to find an emerging voice for their emerging brand, to make an alliance with somebody who, like, you can grow together. And there's a beautiful excitement and genuine joy to having known each other for that long time and watch each other's stars rising. I think it's because I've had that with several authors, and those friendships are like, I would do anything for them at this point.
That's amazing. That answer gave me chills. I love that picture of you growing together. That's such a great answer.
Yeah, what it means for an author is that it benefits you to be an audiobook listener if you can learn to be a listener and an audiobook lover. But I know not everybody wants to be, that's fine. And not everybody has time to be, and that's fine. But if you like it, that's an asset.
Yeah, it's like reading in the genre you write in. Like, you really need to know what it is that makes an audiobook good. It's not necessarily the story, because a bad narrator or a narrator that doesn't connect with the story. Let's put it that way, because I think that you all are so talented in so many ways, but a narrator that doesn't connect with the story can ruin that story. And but a great narrator that really puts in the time to connect with the story can make a mediocre story amazing. And I'm a huge audiobook listener, and I've seen that happen over and over again.
Yeah, I feel like a good narrator elevates the story, like a narrator that, like you said, connects with it. It gives it just a whole nother dimension that you're not going to have. It's a new experience. And I just love it when I listen to the audiobooks and it's, oh, this person gets it. They understand, and it's makes it fuller and richer some way.
Yeah. I think your narrator for your 1920s series, she really does that. She really elevates that story. And it's so interesting to me that she lives here in Houston.
She does.
Shout her out. What's her name?
It's Elizabeth Klett. Elizabeth Klett, yeah. So let's talk about accents for a second, because you brought that up earlier, and I had no idea that my narrator wasn't British so how do you feel about accents and doing accents, and like, what are the pros and cons of doing an accent that's very different from your own, things like that?
Yeah, her narrator she's from the States, correct?
Yeah.
But she has this amazing British accent. You would not know. The difference didn't know it either until just recently.
And she The reason I'm asking is I have another series that's not a British person is the protagonist. And I said, would you be interested in narrating this other series? And she said that she would like to do something in her natural voice and her natural accent. So how do you feel about accents?
I try to be very honest about the accents that I feel comfortable doing and those I do not. Because there's nothing worse than just a crappy, haphazard. The best thing that Emma Chase ever did for me was setting her Royally series in Westco, which is a fictitious sort of another province in the British Isles, like another area that doesn't actually exist. So if I ever see a review that like says that my British accent is, I can be like, yes, but it is a spot on Westconian. I will have that.
It's perfect. I
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I've done some acting in my past, and I considered briefly, but I can barely speak English. So any sort of accent is just beyond me. My family makes fun of me all the time if I even try. So no, that would not be something I could do. So it would really limit me in what I.
The joy of a well-written accented character, because as we know, it's not just an accent, it's got to be supported by the vocabulary, the rhythms, the sensibility of an area. Like a couple of times an author has written just a delicious, what I call like a Southern glissando in piano playing when you just go down a bunch of keys. There is that upset Southern woman who says something indignant that sounds just, I don't know what, like she goes sliding down all these keys and then makes her point at the end. And I can't think of the words right now, but it's so fun.
I love it. And I just appreciate it so much when I hear narrators do accents that are not their own. And it's just so amazing. I just love it. So kudos to everyone and all the narrators who do that and you.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are magpies. We're always listening. We're always listening to see what we can pick up. And I benefited from moving across the country when I was a teenager. So I moved from Minnesota to New Jersey, to northern New Jersey, to a preppy part of New Jersey. So not everybody's like always, oh, New Jersey. I'm like, no, that's not the only way people speak there. Yeah, but what that does when you move to a whole other accent context is all of a sudden you can hear all the accents and what the changes are.
I agree with that. I think I've noticed that too, because we moved a lot. And I think when you do that, when you're new, things that you wouldn't notice if you'd lived there your whole life. So I can see how that would happen. You've worked with a lot of different authors, different genres. Have you noticed any similarities in authors who have had successful careers for the long haul? Because that's something we're all interested in. We want to stick around for a long time.
Yeah. It's really that earlier thing about they are audiobook listeners and lovers themselves. They know who the new voices are. They get excited about trends in audio. They promote their audio in a very organic way because they're listening anyway. It's almost like some authors forget to mention their narrators by name and be able to tap into those audiences that those narrators are working so hard to build. We're there. We're excited about your book too. Team up with us.
Makes sense.
What is the most common mistakes authors making?
A narrator will, I mean, like this, there's a mini and then there's a maxi like answer to this. So the mini is, we will always find where you forgot to close quotes.
Audiobook proofing is wonderful proofing for the text.
It really is. And narrators are told, don't dispute the text, accept the text as it is. The text is the text and do your job. And I get that because we're not there to be editors. That's not in our lane. But I do highlight when there's a missed close quotes or a homophone. Yeah. Last week I had defuse and diffuse were mixed up. And so I highlighted that. So when I'm done with my work, I will send my working PDF back to the producer, or if I'm working directly with the author, so they can see the typos. They don't have to do anything about them. but I will send the highlighted script back to them. But as far as like mistakes in this podcast focus sense of things, I just think as your author business grows, it's such a great thing to establish either a long-term relationship with a narrator who can produce for you, or a top-tier production company who can, just in the same way that you have an editor, because you're not the one who needs to be spending time on that. So if you hire a top-tier audiobook production company to handle that part of your business, you have more time to do what you do.
Yeah, I don't think authors think about initially. We're just like, oh, we just want to do an audiobook and we want the audiobook out. And we oftentimes don't think long term about how much easier that would be if you have the same person you can go to or a company that you can just work with. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, so I'm going to shout out Lyric Audiobooks, which I founded in 2014 and is now under the executive producer, Katie Robinson, who is taking it to new heights. And she works with authors in ways that work with their business. So how important is it to them that the audio and the ebook and the print come out at the same time? For some authors, it's really important. For some, they're like, I write quickly and you're not going to have the lead time you need, and that's fine. And she works with them on casting. Some of them are very specific. I have to have these two people because they're in my head when I'm writing. And other people are like, bring me something new. Well, I'm open. So it's really great to have that team on your side. And I just don't think it's going to cost you that much more when you think about time and mistakes and heartache saved.
Yep. And when it's all said and done, it's worth it, because I've worked with a production company before too. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever, because I just did not have the bandwidth or the knowledge just to do this stuff myself. So yeah, it's great. I highly recommend that. Do you see any trends in any genre that, like the dual narration not for a while, dual narration is here to stay, I think. But before, it was just usually one narrator. You didn't have two in a story, or not the stories I listened to anyway.
Yeah. Solo narration was how it was when I started. And then, like you said, dual, meaning that I do my POV chapters, including all of the voices in those. And my co-narrator does all his POV chapters, including my voice in his chapters. We have to echo each other's vocal choices. But now, as you probably both know, duet and multicast and graphic audio's versions of like the Fourth Wing novel, where there's a regular version and then there's like the full cast graphic audio with sound effects and the whole thing. A lot of fun with production. And I think it's really important for authors not to get drawn towards something they feel like they have to do because it's a trend right now, but it doesn't really fit the vibe of what they're writing. If you're writing a contemplative midlife crisis at the beach, you don't need multicast.
You don't need people walking on the sand.
No, we're good. Yeah. And the other thing is multicast and duet narration are significantly more expensive if you haven't sold your audio rights. If you're producing it indie, that's way more expensive because of the editing that it takes to put all those different voices together and have it sound really good.
I have a funny story about Fourth Wing. I'm again pretty much exclusively audiobook listener, just because I can get things done when I'm doing it. But when I was listening to it, I was like, I cannot get into this. What is wrong with this narration? And I had heard the narrator before, and I just was like, what is going on? And I realized after I had gone to the book and read the book, I had it on like half speed. I kept thinking,
slower?
It's so slow. Like, why is this so slow? I don't understand. And I had it on half speed. I don't know how that happened, but yeah. So I went back and listened to it on regular speed. It's lovely. It's wonderful. So check your speed if something sounds off. It's Probably you, not them.
Meditation speed.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't the book for that either.
One of our questions is about what's coming in the future. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you about when we're writing, are there things we can do that would lend itself better to narration? Are there any tips or things that maybe you've come across that you've thought, oh, I wish the authors didn't do this, or it would be so much easier or a better listening experience? Do you have any tips for that?
I can really tell when an author checks their work for the day by reading it out loud. There was a book that I won an Earphones Award for called Weightless by an author called Sarah Bannon. Basically, it's a kind of a fish out of water story, but it was really sad. It was really beautiful. And when I got a chance to meet her, I said, when I would get to the end of the page, I could almost tell where you were going with the sentence. I almost felt like I breathed with her, which was the most just beautiful thing.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Instead of having like super long sentences or choppy sentences, it felt like storytelling, which is a kind of a weird thing to say because that's what I do no matter what. But she said, I always read my work out loud when I'm checking it. And I was like, there it is.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip for proofing. Basic thing is like you can proof really well if you read things aloud. But I wonder too if more authors are doing dictation now, and I'm wondering if that gives a more natural rhythm to the story instead of typing. That's something that I guess you wouldn't know unless you had read the author before when they typed it versus dictation. So I think that is true though, that if you read it aloud, you catch things that just sound awkward. They may they may look fine when you read them, but when you read certain words aloud, sometimes two words next to each other, it just doesn't sound right. And you've got to go back and fix that.
Or if they rhyme.
And it's not a poetry book, right?
Like if it's a really serious scene and you accidentally had two phrases that end with rhyming words, it
makes you think, was that intentional?
I have a mischief maker in my brain who will start having fun and is looking for any excuse to have fun and make jokes. So I had author who loved using the French expression for pout, which is M-O-U-E, but it's pronounced moo. So here we are in a little flirtatious scene, and she makes a little moo. Now in print, you know see
exactly
what
what's happening.
Yes,
but in audio, they're flirting and she makes a moo.
Yeah, exactly.
You can love that word, but it is not an audio-friendly word.
Yes, there are certain things that I have older books that I did not think about audio when I wrote them. And now I've put a lot of books into audio. And one of them, I had a character named Jack. And every time he asks a question, he'll say, Jack asked.
Yes.
But you have to be very careful when you pronounce that. And so I felt sorry for my narrator with that book. But things like that, you don't realize that if you don't read it aloud.
That's right.
That and the name Lilith.
Yeah.
If Lilith owns something that begins with an S, then I hate you.
Sure.
Specific tips there, which is good to know. It's really good to know.
Yeah. Or like my grandchildren, August is one of August's, like when it's a possessive, or Atticus's. It's just really hard. Some names are hard. And so I can see. I've also really wondered, and this probably isn't a question for you, but you might know the answer. When we read romance and the male's point of view, it sounds lovely, but having a male narrator say those words out loud sometimes can be cringy because I know in my own, I heard it and went, ooh, I wish I had heard that before, because it does sound like maybe a man wouldn't say those things, and just being real careful about things like that, I think, is probably important too. But yeah, sometimes it's just cringy. Here now, if a woman reads it, it doesn't bother me. Like solo narration, that doesn't bother me, but sometimes it's a little cringy. Isn't that weird? Just one of my weird things.
No, I don't think it's weird. It's a part of the nuance of translating things to audio, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. What do you see coming? We'll ask that question.
I'm not the first person to say this, but AI is coming. I went to the London Book Fair in March, and this year they had an audio track one day. So I went to a bunch of the things in the audio track, and half at least of the panels were about AI and audio. And there was, in the trade show area, there were several companies who are offering digital replicas of narrators. And the good thing that I heard, because I listened to a New York Times article this morning that was not high profile enough to have a human voice narrate it. They got to get the whole paper in audio. So whatever's not going to be narrated by a human because it's a feature is going to be done by a robot voice. And they're getting better. But what I liked that I heard at the London Book Fair was basically this perspective from people in the industry, in the publishing industry, that an AI narrated audiobook, the function of that or the purpose of that is going to be almost like a placeholder. Maybe an author is newer and they're still testing the market. They're going to see if this sells any copies at all. And that if the book takes off and their income merits it, then of course they're going to invest in a human voice, because that is the top-notch, top-tier listener experience that of course you want. And it's like a signifier of your success as an author. And as a narrator, I felt great to hear that we are like the premier option, because we are.
Yes, you are.
I think there's certain things that you're just not going to get with AI, at least right now. Maybe someday in the future, they'll have more nuance and stuff to them. But I think, like you say, the human narration is going to be the thing that is the top tier. And I could see, if you can't afford to do that, you might try it in AI to, like you said, to test it and see how it does. But yeah, this is something that we're all dealing with, it. All segments of business. Creativity is figuring out how we're going to deal with this. And I agree that one thing Joanna Penn has pointed out is that in the future, people will be able to say, oh, I want this book in this language, and they'll be able to listen to it in that language. And I'm like, that's something that we wouldn't have had before. But yeah, it is. There's a lot to sort out.
And will you, the author, get the income from that? There's a company that doesn't operate in the U.S. rights region called Storytel. They do a lot of European and global audiobook productions, but they're not in the U.S., probably because Audible is like, you can't come here. But Storytel's model for their consumers is you can actually choose which voice reads to you.
Right, yeah.
So that separates the narrator from the story completely. Although, if you have a voice that you can't stand, but you want the book, you can change the narrator. It happens, but
wow. Interesting
tricky.
times.
It's such a tricky thing. I heard a podcast recently just on AI and Claire Taylor's What If podcast and about AI. And the fact is, a lot of people cannot get over the original sin of AI. The way it was developed, that is what they cannot get over. And it is hard to get over that. It's hard to look past that. It's interesting how in romance in particular, it's been self-regulating in a lot of ways. Authors just they're not comfortable with using AI voices. They're not comfortable with other authors who are using AI voices. And so therefore it self-regulates in a lot of ways. That's not always going to be the case. And so it's just interesting to see what will happen.
I think it's one of those things that Jonah Penn always says, lean into being human. And people have narrators that they follow because they love that narrator. And that will always be a draw for some listeners. There will be other listeners that they don't care about that. But in the same thing with our books, there'll be I want to read this type of book from this specific author.
The voices that we hear back from in terms of reviews and getting really up in arms about this, that, or the other, we're not hearing from the people who are just not that passionate about it. They're on the treadmill. They want the content. They choose they use Speechify or whatever, and they're just not all that connected to an actor interpreting a text and being able to call back to the inside jokes between the characters and wink at you or get choked up with you. There are some people who that's not what they're looking for, and that's their choice to make.
It is. Yes. A very interesting times for all this.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. So we like to ask everybody, what's the best thing you've done to set yourself up for success?
Understanding that I, as a narrator, bring my skill set into the publishing industry, that I am a service provider to the publishing industry. I hear a lot of narrators focused on being an actor, and we are, or many of us are actors, but it's a different thing, that it behooves us to pay attention to publishing, what's going on in publishing.
Yeah. I love that Andy's in the clubhouse room some mornings, and I love that you're in there because it is primarily about publishing, and you always have such a great perspective, but I'm sure that you've heard stuff and learned stuff that has helped you in your business too.
The things that you guys have to deal with, like Amazon ads and Facebook ads, and which newsletter platform do you use, and what about international translations? And I sit there sometimes going, oh, when do you find time to write the book?
Yeah. We do too, honestly.
I know, I bet.
Well,
true.
this has been so great. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it so much. Tell everyone how they can find out more about you and Lyric and all of those things.
You can reach me at andiarndt.com. So AndiIARNDT.com. If you're listening to this and you're a narrator looking for a community, you can go to Narrator.life, and that is the domain, as you can have .life now. And if you're an author looking for excellent audiobook production in romance, indie romance, you can go to lyricaudioBooks.com, and Katie would be more than happy to set up a call with you.
Great. All right. We will have all those links in the show notes. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I love your show. I listen to it when I'm gardening.
Oh, that makes
so
us so
nice.
happy. All right. We'll have all those links at wishidknownforwriters.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to that same link /support. And we will see everybody next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.